In today's video, we're going to build a list in SwiftUI with a custom cell. We're also going to put that list in a navigation view so we can show a detail view, and we're going to pass information from the list to the detail view. And as a little bit of a bonus, I'm going to show you how to open up a link as you see here with the YouTube video, and we're going to do some refactoring at the end to make our SwiftUI code nice and neat. Today's video is sponsored by Squarespace. If you're an iOS developer, you probably need a portfolio or a website for the app you're building. Head to squarespace.com/Sean Allen to get started on that today. All right, so here we are in a kind of blank project. Two little bits of housekeeping before we get started. There is a starter project involved. The link to that Dropbox is in the description to download that. Now, I normally don't like starter projects in my apps because I like to show the whole process. However, there's no actual code regarding the list involved. What I have here is this video object, right, that we're going to use. You can see it's a struct that has, image name, title, description, view count, upload date, and the URL. But the real reason I included this, of course we could have coded that, but it has all the data, right? The descriptions, the titles, the view count, the upload date. I went and looked all this up, typed all this out. I figured you didn't want to type it out and you didn't want to watch me type it out either. So that's what this starter project has, is just this file, video.swift, already in it. And it also has the assets, right? The images for my thumbnails on the videos. So that is all the starter project is. It has no existing code for the table at all. It's really just our data and just to save time because this video might be a little long as it is. And the last little note is that yes, this video is geared towards beginners and those just learning. However, it's not an absolute beginner video. I assume you've written some Swift and a little bit of SwiftUI before, not much, but if this is your first time ever writing Swift or SwiftUI, maybe go back and check out my absolute fundamentals beginners video right here, and I'll put a link to that in the description. Okay, now let's really dive in. The first step we're going to do is rename this content view. So if you click in it, right click, refactor, rename, you see we get this nice handy dandy thing. And if you click on this little plus button next to the comments, this will also change that. And we want this to be video list view. Hit return, that'll rename that everywhere. Cool, now let's get our canvas back up with this little icon here, hit canvas. You may have to hit resume on it to get it back up and running. Now that the rename is there, let's make it 75%. There we go. Okay, cool. So here's how we're going to break this app down, and we're going to build it up piece by piece. First, we're going to build the cell, and then we're going to put that cell into a list, and then we're going to create our detail view that you see here, and then we're going to connect those two with a navigation view, pass some data back and forth, and then we're going to refactor. So that's kind of the process of how this is going to go. So back in our project here, let's start by creating our cell before we put it in a list here. So instead of hello world.padding, I want an H stack because our cell is kind of horizontal views, right? You see the image with the title and the upload date. So anytime you're stacking views horizontally, you want an H stack. And the first element in our H stack is our image, right? And we want to give that a name. Now, what name do we want to put in? If we go back to our XC assets on the left, we're just going to pick one for right now, just to get our UI up and running. Let's do average-dev. So what I like to do, double click on it, do a Command C to copy, and then back in our video list view, we'll just pass in that string with Command V. There we go. Wow, not exactly what we wanted. So in SwiftUI, if you just put the image, it's going to put the huge image on there. Well, we want this to be resizable, and we're going to give it a aspect ratio that we want it to be. So the first modifier on our image is .resizable. There we go. Okay, so you see that resized it to fit. Not exactly what we want. We'll get there. So the next modifier is .scaled to fit. There we go. That's going to keep it at the scale, that 16:9 aspect ratio that a thumbnail is. So you see, we're starting to get there. Now let's give it a frame. We're only going to give it a height, though, on the frame because we did scaled to fit, it's always going to maintain that aspect ratio, right? So we can start deleting some of these parameters because they have their default values. So the height we're going to give it is not 100, it's going to be 70. And this is just me just dialing the UI in. I kind of know that's the size that I want to go for. And then we do want to add some corner radius, another modifier. We're going to do 4 for the corner radius, just slightly. It's going to be hard to see right now because it's kind of small. Again, you can always zoom in if you want to see. That's kind of what we're working with here. But again, we're building this up slowly. So we have our image. Now the next thing in our H stack is our title of the video. So that is going to be a text in SwiftUI, text, and then we'll just give it the title. I'm an average, well, capital A, average developer. So there's our title. Again, not exactly how we want it to look, but you can see how we're getting there. Now we got to start adding some modifiers to tweak it. So the first modifier is we want font weight, because it's a title. We want it to be bolder, but not like fully bold, or we could just do .bold right there. You see, if you want it bold, do that. By the way, feel free to make this your own if you don't like some of my design choices. I'm going to go semi-bold, and you can see if I just do the dot on the font weights, you can see all my options here, right? Light, medium, regular, semi-bold, thin, ultralight, nil, whatever. But we're going semi-bold. Again, make it your own. Design it how you like. Now, what we want to do, right, if this is like a really long title, as you can see here, it's going to start wrapping and wrapping and wrapping and wrapping, and we don't want it to get too big, because as you can see, like our cell, it's just going to look ugly. We want to limit those lines to 2, and then if the title is super long, that it's longer than 2 lines, we'll just do the ... to truncate it, right? And that kind of happens automatically. So let me delete my gibberish there and go back to that, and then we can do another modifier called line limit, and then 2. So that way we'll let it go to 2 lines, but nothing more than that. And what we can also do to help with, text that is variable, right? Because we don't know how long the title is going to be, how short it's going to be. We can also shrink it so that it does fit, some automatic shrinking. So we can do minimum scale factor. 1 means it's not going to shrink at all, stay there. But if we do, 0.5, that means, okay, if you're super long, we'll let you automatically shrink the text, but only down to 50%, right? We don't want like super crazy, tiny, small text that you can't even read. So, the minimum scale you can go down to is 5 if you need to shrink the text to fit. Okay, now that we have our title, let's do another text for our upload date here. And we'll just do, January 1, 2021. That's not it. We're going to fill in real data once we plug in our video object that we have. But for now, when we're building our UI, I like to just kind of throw in dummy data just to get it working. Now you'll notice, right, we're in an H stack. And so again, we're just stacking these views horizontally. You can see we have the image, title, that. Now we don't want the date to be to the right. We want the date to be below I'm an average developer. So that requires a V stack. If H stack is horizontal, V stack is vertical, right? So we want to put these 2 texts in a V stack. So I'm going to type V stack, and we're going to cut these, paste these there. Now you can see we're in a V stack. We still got some more formatting to do because it's not exactly how we want, but now you can see our H stack is an image on the left, and then the right side of the H stack is a V stack, which holds our 2 texts, right? You can see how you can kind of compose these views in SwiftUI. So for our date text, again, we want to give this some little bit of formatting here. We want to do font, not a font weight. We want to give it an actual like font here. And we want to do .sub headline. Again, if you just do dot, you can see the different kinds of fonts you can have: headline, caption, footnote, whatever. We're going to do sub headline here. You can see the sizing on the right there in real time. And then we want to do .foreground color, .secondary. This is kind of like a light gray, as you can see, that's going on there with our date. Now, our average developer and date are centered. We want them kind of to align left. And how we can do that in the V stack is your V stack can take parameters. So if I do that, you can see alignment, spacing, then content. Well, the content is, the views we have in there. So we actually want to do alignment. And the reason we don't have to have both alignment and spacing is because spacing has a default value. So if you leave out spacing, it's going to give it the default value. So the alignment we can give it is center, which is default, leading or trailing. We want leading. And you can see on my preview here, now we're aligned left there in the V stack of our text. However, that text looks kind of cramped, as you can see. So maybe I do want some spacing in my V stack. So if I do comma spacing, let's try 2, see what that does. Okay, maybe 3, space it out a little bit more, maybe 5. But you can see how I'm playing with this number and getting the spacing there. So we'll keep it with 5. But you can see now all these elements in my V stack will be leading alignment and a spacing of 5 in between them. There's only 2 items, but if you had 7 items, they would all be equally spaced with a 5 in between. Okay, so our cell has pretty much come together. It's a pretty simple cell, right? We have the image with the V stack and the text. Okay, so now we want to put this custom cell in a list. And again, we're going to refactor this at the end to make it all nice and neat, but we'll leave it all spelled out, if you will, so you can kind of see what's going on. So if I click on this H stack, command and left click on it here, right? You can see I get some options here. Embed in list. Wow, you're really gonna do this for me? So if I click on that, I'm gonna embed it in a list, and you can see there we are, 5 things, right? You can see the list of 0 up until 5. Let's do 20 to like really illustrate that here. Try again on your preview. Oh, they have extra spacing in there. cool, now I have 20. And if you hit this little play button on the top of your preview, this is kind of how you can actually like run the app. So you can see now I can scroll and I have 20 things in a list. So that's pretty cool, right? I just kind of, command clicked on the H stack and threw it in a list here. That's pretty sweet. So again, this is just a generic list of 0 to 20. We only want the list to be based on how many videos we have in our video object. We'll come back to that later, but you can see this starting to take shape. Okay, let's stop this from running here. You can see this doesn't quite look like an app, right? It just goes all the way to the top. We want kind of that like navigation view like header you'll see here. So let's wrap this whole thing in a navigation view. So we'll go navigation view here and open and close curly braces and grab my list here, Command X, Command V, and then so this little keyboard shortcut right here, because SwiftUI, as you can see, gets pretty like indented. So if you just kind of highlight your like overall structure and do Control I, well, my alignment wasn't messed up, but that'll like realign everything for you. So if your alignment gets messed up, highlight it, Control I will line it up for you. Okay, so our navigation view, cool. We just don't have our title yet. Now, a navigation bar title doesn't actually go on the navigation view. Because if you think of the navigation view as a container, it can hold multiple views or screens in there. So the navigation view itself doesn't have the title. What the navigation view is holding has the title. So it's holding our list. So on the list, we want to give it a modifier of navigation title, and we want to say Sean's top 10, because these are like going to be my top 10 viewed videos, ever. So again, now you see we get this navigation view, which now when we build our detail view, the navigation view is going to be what kind of like makes that happen, makes us be able to go to another view, but we'll get that in a second. So right now we have our list in a navigation view with our cell, which is some dummy data. Let's actually get some real data going on here. So back to our video.swift. This is the stuff that already included in the project. I have a struct called video list, and that struct has an array called top 10. This way I can do video list.top10, and I get an array of videos. And this is what we're going to use to populate our list here, right? Because if you go back to the video list view, you can make a list, and if you pass in 0 to 20, that's just going to give you 20 of whatever you passed in, right? But if you want it to be dynamic, we have to have an array for this. So up on our video list here, we're going to create a property called var videos, and it is going to be an array of videos, and that is going to equal video list dot top 10. And again, remember video list dot top 10. If I go back, it is an array. So there's my array of videos. Nice and neat there. So now that I have my array, and this is crucial for making your list work more than a generic 0 to 20. So now when I do list, I can pass in the videos, right? That variable. So I can say, hey, use this array of videos to create the list, but I need to have an ID. And sometimes you'll see /self. This works fine if you have just something like strings or integers or anything like that. And when you have a custom object, the SwiftUI list, the way SwiftUI works by like constantly re-rendering views, it needs an ID to manage all the individual videos essentially. So on our video, we need to conform to identifiable. So identifiable. And again, this is crucial for when you have a custom object in your list. Right, it's going to say it doesn't conform to identifiable, because if you conform to identifiable, you need to have a property called ID, and we're going to set that equal to UUID, and these parentheses initialize a new one. So we're just generating a new UUID per video. So now we conform to identifiable ID. And again, if you just have an array of strings for your list, you don't need this. You can do it by self. But if you have a custom object, then you have to do identifiable. So anyway, back to video list view. Now instead of self, we can do .id. And then this is, as it goes through the array, this is each individual item. I'm going to call this video instead of item, just for clarity. So I know this is a single video in my array of videos. So now, as we go through my array of videos and populate each cell, I don't want everyone to say average or the image of average dev. I don't want everyone to say this. Now is where I put in my dynamic data. So instead of each cell having the image name average dev, I can do video dot image name. There we go. I'm going to try again on this. See if this works here. There we go. So now you can see all my images, right, are correct based on the videos coming in. However, my title and date are not. That's the same old stuff. So again, we're just going to keep going down the list here. And instead of the title text being I'm an average developer, we want to do video dot, and you can see all the stuff I get here, right? Title. Cool, now you should see, now it updates with all my titles. It looks a little cramped. We're gonna fix that in a second. But same thing with the upload date, right? So text is video.upload date. There you go, and it's a string. So now all our dates are correct. And like I said, this does look a little cramped vertically. So on our image, and we're actually, when we refactor, we're gonna change this, but just for now, because I don't wanna get ahead on the refactoring, I'm gonna do padding on my image, but I'm not just gonna do padding all around, because watch what happens when I do that. That looks weird. So I wanna do padding dot vertical. So vertical just means like top and bottom. And I only wanna give it like a 5 or a 4, just a little bit. So you can see, well, let's see when I do like 10, just to show you. You can see it on the right. Super spaced out, 0, not spaced out. If we give it a 4, that gives us some little bit of breathing room that I'm looking for. All right, we have our list. Let's actually run this on the simulator just to get a feel for it. I like to run it on the simulator on my device to really see how things are going. As you can see here, I'm in dark mode on my simulator. All right, so you can see how it looks in dark mode. And on your simulator while it's up, if you do Command-Shift-A, it'll switch to light mode. So you can see both light and dark on your app. Command-Shift-A to switch back. But cool, I like to get a feel for it on the simulator. Things are looking good. Great, let's stop it there. Okay, so now the next steps here are to build our detail view that you see here, and then we're gonna connect it via the navigation view, make sure we're passing the video data, opening up the link to show the video, and then we're going to refactor our SwiftUI code to make it look nice and neat, and we'll call it a day. Before we dive into that, let's hear from today's sponsor, Squarespace. Like I said in the intro, I highly recommend iOS developers, especially those trying to get their first job, to have a beautiful looking portfolio, or if you're trying to create your own app. That app's probably gonna need a website or a landing page. And like I said, Squarespace is a great way to get that up and running very quickly. Now I know we're developers. You probably have the inclination to be like, oh, I can build a website, and you can. Not saying you can't. But think of the opportunity cost of your time, right? Like it takes a lot to maintain and build a website, right? You have all the different screen sizes to worry about, mobile, big iMac that I'm looking at right now, iPad, all the different browser compatibilities, constantly keeping it up to date as things change. Like it's a lot of work to build and maintain your own website. So I always highly recommend Squarespace handling that for you. They have all kinds of beautiful themes that you can choose from to make it really good looking. They do all the SEO, the analytics for you. Again, it just takes so much off your plate to let Squarespace handle that. So when you're ready to get started, go to squarespace.com to check it out. And when you're ready to actually launch your site, go to squarespace.com/Sean Allen to get 10% off your first purchase of a website or domain. All right, back to the video. Okay, so now let's start our video detail view, which is gonna be the second screen of the app. So click our file here, do Command-N for a new file in the group. We want a SwiftUI view, hit next. We're gonna call it video detail view, hit create. There we go. Now we have our basic, hello world view that is now our video detail view. Now here's what it's going to have. We know we're going to pass the data, right? So we know we're going to have a var video, and that is of type video. Now it doesn't have anything yet, right? Our video detail view doesn't know what video that is. So when it's showing the preview, we need to pass in the video, and you're going to see us do this when we connect everything. So if I hit the parameter video, well, in our preview, we have to use our dummy data, right? So I'm going to go video list dot top 10. That gives us our array. And then I'm just going to do dot first. So the first object in that top 10 array, it should be, if we go back to video.swift, should be this wish I knew video should be the first one, right? And then I like the project organization here, drag this up, so you got video list, video detail view, then video. Anyway, so now let's start building this UI that you see here, how we have the nice big thumbnail, the description, the views, the upload date, and then we have a big watch now button that will open up the video in Safari, so you can check it out. So again, looking at the screen, you can kind of see it's just a V stack, right? All the views are kind of stacked vertically. So let's start with that here. Scroll up a little bit, get rid of this hello world text, start with our V stack. And the first thing in our V stack is the image, and then the image name is going to be, again, just like before, video.image name, because again, we're passing that video in, and our preview knows what it is because we told the preview, hey, it's the first one, right? 9 things. So again, very similar to before, we want this to be resizable. Hopefully this is a little bit of a review, so I'm gonna go a little bit faster. Scaled to fit, and we want .frame. I'm gonna do the same thing because we're scaled to fit is gonna keep the aspect ratio. So delete width, we don't delete alignment, and then the height we're going to go ahead and make 150 because again we want this big. Again, feel free to tweak the design, make it your own. That's what I recommend. And then corner radius of, let's say 12 this time. And again, you can tweak this as you want because again I want this nice little rounded corners look that you see right there. Cool. So there's our thumbnail. Pretty easy. Again, review. Next we want to have the title below it. So again, another text. And like I said, I'm going a lot quicker now because hopefully this is a review. Except, whoops, I don't want to pass in a string. I want to pass in video dot title. Cool. And then now I want this to be font of dot title 2. And again, I want this to be font weight of dot semi bold and dot line limit. Remember, we wanted the line limit 2. We don't want this thing to be huge. And then you'll notice this is kind of like lining up on the left. Like you see the 9 in the programming are like left aligned. Well, I actually do want it to be center aligned on this. So here the modifier is multi-line text alignment. And you may be wondering like, man, Sean, how do you know all these modifiers? You have them all memorized. And first of all, there's like hundreds of modifiers, so I don't have them all memorized. But there are certain modifiers you're going to use the vast majority of the time. And the more you write this stuff, the more you'll just kind of like remember what you need. So don't feel like you have to have all these memorized right away. You'll just start learning them the more and more you write SwiftUI. So multi-line text alignment.center, because again, there are some you just use over and over and over again. And then that's centered it as you see, but for me, it's a little too close to the edge. So I want to do padding, but again, not padding all around because that puts too much space there. I just want to do padding on the horizontal, right? Just the left and the right, just to kind of, get it away from the edges a little bit. Okay, now if we go back to our design, you see now we have like the view count and the upload date. However, those are horizontal from each other. So that's going to be an H stack within our V stack, right? So again, we're still in our V stack. Let's put an H stack, because again, this is where we're going to put our 2 texts that have the view count and the upload date. So the view count's a little different than a regular text, right? It has that little eye icon. So for that, we're going to use what's called a label, which is new in iOS 14 in SwiftUI. And here you can see we have one with a string and an image name and one with a system image name. So the image one is where you've like uploaded your own image and you want to use that. System image is where we use what's called an SF symbol. If you're not familiar with SF symbols, I've done a whole video about that. I'll put the link in the description. You can check that out. But it's basically another app that you can download on your Mac to have access to all these symbols. Well, they're already in Xcode, but the app lets you kind of like browse it and see what you want. I'll show you that in a second. So the string we want the label to say, so basically a label is like an image and text right next to each other. Very common in iOS. So the string we want it to be is video dot view count, but you can see here, view count is an int. So it's expecting a string. So we have to do what's called string interpolation here, wrap it in the string, do / parentheses. That was kind of a weird way to do it, but that's the end result that you need it to be. Okay, so now what image name do we want to show it? Well, I have SF symbols open, so I'm going to Command Tab. You can see there's the icon. Again, that video is going to show you how to download it, show you how to get it all set up. But if I go to this app, you can see it's just a bunch of icons and symbols, and it's great because these are all built into Xcode and iOS. These are great to use, and there's like thousands of them. So I'm going to search for eye for like views, and you can see you can get like the emoji eyes if you want to use that for a view, the eyeglasses. I'm going to use the classic eye.fill. So you can see that's the string I need to pass in, eye.fill. And you can either right click, copy name, or you can do Command-Shift-C to copy name. And I'm going to Command Tab back to Xcode. And then now the string that I want to pass in is eye.fill. I could have just typed it. That's pretty easy. But now you see here, I get the eye and my view count. But we want the view count and the upload date to be that secondary color, right? So I want the dot font to be dot subheadline. Remember, just like before with our upload date, and then the foreground color to be dot secondary. Again, that's that like secondary gray color, which you can now see there. Okay, so that's the first element of our H stack. The next element is going to be our upload date. So if I do text, and then the text is going to be video dot upload date, right? This is from before. So you see there's our February 17th, whatever. And I'm going to go ahead and copy these modifiers because we want the same ones. We want the font to be subheadline and the foreground color to be secondary. So we're going to paste those there. Cool. Okay, so now's where we need to adjust our H stack. Because if you look at it, these things are like super cramped in the middle. Well, on our H stack, remember we can add like the spacing and alignment, those parameters. We don't want to do anything with alignment. However, we want to add some spacing in the middle to kind of push them apart just to be visually appealing. So again, on the H stack, let's go ahead and add some parameters here, but I just want the spacing one. And then we'll do 40, right? Get some nice spacing in there. There you go. So there you go. Now you can see the nice spacing in between it. Things are kind of cramped, so we're going to add some overall padding in a little bit, but you can start to see our view come together. Okay, now that we have the views and the date on there, pulling up the design again, next we have our description, which is some nice body text. So that is not in our H stack, right? We want that to be part of our V stack that we got going on here. So again, the elements of our V stack are image, text, H stack, which holds those two, and then now we do the description, right? So now we just want another text with video.description. And as you can see, that's going all the way to the edges. We don't want that. So let's do font.body. So that's just like typical font. I think that's the default. So I don't know if we had to do that, but we'll keep it in there. And then padding is what we want, right? We want to kind of give it some space from that and then, bring it in from the edges. So it's kind of easier to read. Okay, now the final thing is just our button that says watch now that goes to, YouTube. So now, again, the last part of our VStack, this is going to be, you might think you might do button, but no, that's not what we're going to do. We're going to do a link. Again, this is new in iOS 14 here. And if we initialize that, you can see we can get a destination and a label. Now, the reason we're not going to pass in we could pass in a string that says watch now. In fact, I'll do that. Could say watch now. We're going to change this in a second. And the URL is going to be video.url. And you can see we just get this typical, link looking thing, watch now. We want that to be a button. So let me actually get rid of that. That's what happens when you put in a string. If you do the destination and label allows you to customize, whatever you want it to be. So again, this URL, let's get rid of that, do video.url. That's where we're going. Now label is, we can basically format this text. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to do text. It's going to say watch now. And you're going to say, well, Sean, that looks the same. It's still that blue button. Yeah, but now we actually get to work some magic here, right? So I can do .bold. That's what I want it to be. I can do .font, .title 2. I can give it a frame. This time I am going to give it a width and height. I like the width of 260. Sometimes I go 280. You can play with this if you want. Height is 50. This is kind of like my standard button that I go for. Now you can see that just gave it a frame, but you can't see anything. Well, now we want to do .background color, and we'll do parentheses .system red. And then obviously that blue is kind of clashing. So now we can do .foreground color, .white. There you go. That's starting to look like a button now. And as always, I like to just round off the corners a little bit. Corner radius. Nope, that's not it. Coordinate space. Corner radius. And then we'll give it a 10, right? Kind of looks like the new Apple buttons, right? Just little rounded corners there. So now when we tap our watch now button, it's going to go to our video URL. It's going to open up Safari. So this doesn't quite look like the design we have. Everything is kind of cramped. We're going to add some spacers to push the watch now button down to the bottom. Okay, so let's add a spacer in between our description and our link, right? So you'll see what that does. Spacer. So a spacer basically just fills up any available space. As you can see, not what we want, but we're slowly starting to get there. We can add some other strategic spacers to kind of make this look better. And again, what a spacer does, it helps you with multiple screen sizes. So yeah, this is the iPhone 12. So it's probably one of the larger ones. But if you had a smaller one, what the spacer would do was it would just reduce this space between the body and the watch now button to fit whatever phone it is. So if you ever need your UI to be flexible, spacer is a good way to do that. So now I'm going to add another spacer up at the top because I don't want this 9 things to be pressed all the way to the top here. Spacer, and there you go. Now you can see, okay, starting to look a little better. Delete the space here. Okay, now some of the items in the middle, like I said, it's kind of jumbled up. Well, you see I'm adding spacers. Your initial thought might be to add spacers in between everything. Probably you don't want to do that. So remember our VStack has a spacing parameter. So everything within this VStack, I can do this spacing parameter, and then let's say 20. There you go. Let it breathe a little bit. I'm going to show you that again. I'm going to go to 0. You can see that's what it was. And then put a 2 in front of it for 20. Watch the preview on the right. 20. Cool. Nice breathing spacing. And again, you can play with this design to make it your own, but I'm going to leave it there for the design part. Let's actually run this on the simulator now to see how this is working. Okay, I'm going to click on, delegates and protocols. Nothing's happening yet. Okay, stop. So we've built our detail view. we haven't connected them yet. So that's what we're going to do right now. So again, we're in our detail view. Let's go back to our video list view. And in this list here, we need to add a navigation link. And basically this is our cell, right? The image, the VStack. So whenever this cell in the list is tapped, we want the navigation link to be on that. So here we're going to put the navigation link here, navigation link. And you can see that can take in a destination and a label. So similar to our link thing before, the destination will be a view. So the view will be video detail view, right? And we're gonna have to pass in a video. Well, remember our list has this video object right here. That's the video object that we're gonna pass in. So whatever one we tap on, it's going to create the video detail view from that. And we'll put this label here. And then now the label is basically like the UI. So our label for our navigation link, I don't like the way they lay this out. There we go. Is going to be our cell here, right? All this stuff in our cell, which we're going to refactor out and it's going to look a lot neater, but I'm leaving it here for now just so you can see it. So now, and again, we're going to go back to our highlight all this, Control I. Okay, wow, didn't mess up. But okay, so now again, our navigation link is wrapping our cell. So when our cell is tapped, we're going to go to the video detail view. We have to pass in the video. So whatever video we tapped, it's what's going to happen. Okay, so now let's run this again and try it. Okay, so now you'll notice, now that I have a navigation link, I get the little disclosure indicators here on the right. So let's click on 37 tips. Bam, 37 tips, nice. And you see we automatically get the back button to Sean's top 10. So now let's try another one. Let's try, hey, SwiftUI basics tutorial, which if this was too much for you, try this tutorial, right? So yeah, you can see everything looks good. And again, you can tweak this design if you don't like it, play with it, make it your own. Now let's test the watch now. If you tap watch now on this one, there you go. You go to YouTube. There's my SwiftUI basics tutorial. Again, a great one. You should watch that. Check it out. And you can see we get the back button to SwiftUI list. That goes back to here and back to top 10. So again, that is the navigation link. Pretty simple. Again, you add a navigation link to your navigation view and basically, have the label be your cell essentially. Okay. That is the basic functionality. If you want to stick around for some real quick refactoring just to clean this up, make it look nice and neat. It's not a lot, but you'll see how neat this can look once you refactor. That's what we're going to jump on now. So the main thing we're going to refactor is our cell, right? We want to get this cell out of here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come down here above my preview, create a struct called video cell, and that is of type view, not video. It's going to take in a video, right? We got to pass that in of type video. And we want it to be a var body sum view. This is just the standard SwiftUI. You notice when you create a file, you get this var body sum view. That's just the body of your view. That's pretty standard. So now what I want to do is, well, I lost my H stack. If you notice, when I embedded it in a list, it just assumed it was an H stack. So I'm going to have to create my H stack here, H stack, and then I'm going to want to cut all the stuff from my cell here and put it in my H stack down here. Cool. And you can see because I already have like video.image name, video.title, and it expects to have a video, that is all set up. So now all I have to have in my list here, and you can see how neat this looks, is a video cell. I'll do the autocomplete here, and it initializes it with a video because the cell needs to know what video stuff. And like we said, in this list that is iterating through our videos, we have the video right here. So video. Do a Command B. Let's run a quick test here. Well, we'll stop my existing running to make sure this still works. Cool. Yep, everything is working fine. So now you can see like this video list view over here is, 10 lines of code. And don't get me wrong, you don't want to always strive for as minimal lines of code as possible because often that can lead to very clever and confusing code. You still want it to be readable. But in this case, it is super readable, right? You have a navigation view, you have a list of videos, and then you have a navigation link that points to the video detail view, and then here's your video cell. And I like doing it like this because like if someone wants to understand what's going on the screen, that's pretty understandable. And then if they choose to dive into the video cell, they can, and they can see all this. And if you wanted to, you could cut this out, put it in its own file to like really clean this up. It's neither here nor there, but yeah, that's a good way to make your SwiftUI code very readable. And we'll do one more because this video is already getting kind of long. In the video detail view, you could create this image. Anything that has a lot of modifiers to it, usually I like to try to refactor and make it reusable in some way. It doesn't always work, but that's kind of a rule of thumb. If you see a lot of modifiers, you should think about doing that. So for example, we're gonna do this text watch now because this is like a button. And this is something I have in like all my projects. Is basically, hold on, if you command left click, hit extract sub view, this will take everything in that text and kind of refactor it for you down here, right? So here I want to pass in a title because I want to make this reusable. So var title is a string. And instead of watch now for the text, whatever title I passed in is what I want, right? And so now up here, instead of extracted view, I want this to be, we'll call this standard button. You would name this something different. I usually use like a project, say SA button. If my project was Sean Allen or whatever, you would name that whatever is like your standard button for the project. But now instead of like in my link having all that code, I just do standard button, and then I pass in the title. The title would be watch now. And let me resume my preview. Right. So now you can see that's really cleaned up. And then you can imagine doing that, if you had video title text, and then had all the modifiers out of there. And like I said, usually you only want to refactor out the modifiers if that view can be reusable. And again, if you look at this watch now button, you can imagine how that button could be used like all over the place in the app. So it's a good thing to do. So that was just a little bit of refactoring. I want to show you how you can clean up your SwiftUI code. Again, we could go crazy with it, but video is already getting kind of long. Hope you enjoyed it. If you enjoy my teaching style, my presentation style, I started creating my own courses, seanallen.teachable.com. You can check that out there. I got SwiftUI courses, UI kit courses, all that stuff. Hope you enjoyed it. See you in the next one.